I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip, hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop.
To flourish is to experience supreme well-being in all aspects of your life. There's some grandiosity in human flourishing because it's a moving target, things are always changing. We touch these high points in our life, but I don't think to be flourishing as a human cuts you off from the full range of the human heart, because we know that there's a lot of power in vulnerability. So let's look at the 5 pillars, and these 5 aspects of well-being would sum up to human flourishing.
That is today's guest, Patrick Sperry. He's the founder of Flourish. It's a community that creates healing and transformational experiences through retreats and online education, really geared towards helping individuals live with purpose and compassion. And this episode we designed around these 5 pillars of well-being because I thought, well, if we're looking ahead at travel trends, why not throw this episode in this month to give us that foundation of well-being so we can flourish in the coming year, which, by the way, I don't think it's a word we've used on this podcast before, this idea of flourishing. I really love that. And you are going to walk away from this episode with some actionable takeaways and tools that you can use to gain insight into yourself, and it will definitely add some value into your life. And along the way, of course, we're going to hear Patrick's journey as a traveling yogi. He first moved to LA to pursue his dream of music, and then he spent nearly 4 years traveling across India and Asia, immersing himself in various spiritual practices, taking some detours and side trips along the way. We're going to hear all about that time in his life and how it feeds into what he does today, and so much more, all packed into a fun one coming at you right now. So buckle up, strap in. Thanks for being here, and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey, it's Jason here with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thanks for hanging out here, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. And today, it's also the show to help you flourish in the coming year. As we cruise into the coming year, it's kind of a time for reflection, trying to set ourselves up for whatever successes we want to have in the coming year. I thought this would be a great way to get you going in the right direction in terms of that part of your life. Now, you can check out Pat's work over at peaceloveflourish.com. It's a fun conversation. You're going to hear right at the beginning, he was a body double for a particular celebrity. So you're going to hear about his experience with that and a lot of other fun stuff packed in here. And I'm going to wrap it all up with a quote that I think ties this episode very nicely up in a nice little ribbon at the end for you. And don't forget, by the way, before we dive in, over at zerototravel.com/newsletter, you can get our free weekly newsletter, and that includes plenty of helpful travel resources, some musings, some personal stories, just some other stuff outside of the podcast that you don't get here, and that is free. Sign up over there at zerototravel.com/newsletter. Thank you so very much for being a part of this community, for allowing me the privilege of bringing you this podcast and helping me flourish and continue to flourish with this show. Please enjoy this one. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the other side, my friend. Cheers. So do you prefer Patrick or Pat?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's the age-old question. Let's go with Pat for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pat is kind of my forward-facing version of my name, but Patrick is also okay. It's like my buddies call me Patrick. My sweet friends call me Patrick.
Okay, well, I mean, maybe by the end of this chat, I'll have the honor of calling you Patrick, but I'll just start with Pat Sperry. Welcome to the Zero
You're
Travel
halfway there,
Podcast, my
Jason.
friend. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
We've got some good stuff coming your way today in terms of well-being, and I know this is like kind of what you built your life around, and you have some frameworks we're going to talk about. But I mean, before we get into all that, of course, we're going to have to learn a bit about your story. And I hate to start here because this sounds like like this would be like the leading story on like TMZ or something. But I got to ask, man, how the hell did you become Beckham's body double, David Beckham's body double? Were you the one out there kicking the goals, actually? Or,
That's right, Jason. You did your research. I'm impressed. Yeah, I've had a fun, adventurous life with different phases and chapters, and one led to the next here. I was a highly touted footballer, soccer player growing up. I was on the U.S. national team as a kid, played college soccer. And when I left playing sports to move west to pursue my dream of being a musician, which is something else that's been nurturing for my life, it was natural for me to try to make a side hustle and give this modeling gig a shot. So I did that. And it's mostly waiting in line 10 times a week, not getting any callbacks. But one of the jobs I did land was this Beckham body double gig. The coolest part was that I would get these full sleeves of tattoos, which were David Beckham's tattoos replicated on my body, and they would stay on for months. So I was like 24 in Hollywood, fully tatted for 4 months. People thought that I was a badass. It was fun. He would show up. He was a super gracious guy. He would shake 80 people's hands on set. And I was a bit starstruck,
That's so funny, man. Not to go back to the dating scene in LA at this time for you probably, but I could imagine that was a pickup line that was used a couple times. Like, by the way,
sure.
You don't want to know why I have these tattoos.
Watch, I can even peel them off.
No, that's cool, man. I mean, tell me a bit about the music dream, because you went for it, which I think is really cool. What did that look like for you, going for a dream that was like moving out to LA and just trying to get a record deal? Or what kind of music were you making? I'm just curious because I play in a band here and I write songs and stuff. So I just want to hear a bit more about that.
Awesome, Jason. Well, thanks for taking an interest in my story. It's always an honor to share the life's path. For me, music was like the one space when I was a kid. I was picking up a guitar, 10 years old, and I was just inclined to write songs. It was the way that I processed my human experience. And I had all of this success in sports, but I shared the highs and lows with my family. They were so involved with that part of my life where music was this sanctuary where I could just kind of be with my own and own for myself. And I always had this burning desire. I was pretty good, but I had to put it on the back burner of my life until it just was clear that I was going to go out to Hollywood and give it a shot. So I left to move west, and I cut a couple records with some really great producers who were writing all of the songs for One Direction. So I kind of had this like singer-songwriter vibe, optimistic. I'm a spiritual guy. It's kind of like what I stand for at this phase of my life. But even back then, my lyrics were uplifting, you could say. And they kind of cut to like the heart of you can do it. And yeah, I had a great time playing. I had shows at every little bar where nobody was watching in Hollywood. It was a nice moment, a vulnerable existence trying to make it in Hollywood. And the pressure of that and how much I wanted from music to make it eventually was probably the impetus that kicked me out of Hollywood and started my travels.
I'm just thinking about lyrics now because I kind of write in a similar vein, and I'm trying really hard now to write a bit more about maybe like something character driven or something that's different, but then it keeps ending up being like this sort of mystical lifey thing. And I'm just like, stop this.
Right.
I gotta get out of this rut.
I hear you. My manager would chastise me because every song on my record had the word love in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I could probably find another way of expressing this sentiment.
That's cool.
But
Yeah.
that's whatever's authentic, Jason. I want to hear your music.
No, no, you don't. Not with me singing it anyway. But it's like that part of it is like sort of my sanctuary the same way. But no, I heard a interesting interview with the guy from Weezer, and they have the Blue album, which was like their big album. And one of the things that he said that was a rule for him for that album was that he was not allowed to put the word love in a song. And that's why you don't. I think he says it in one song. I think he said on the entire Blue album. And that was inspiring to me because it was like a good meta example, I think, of like, oh yeah, you can like put one constraint on something that could completely change the dynamic of how you do it. Like that's a really simple constraint if you think about it. Just like, I'm not going to put love in a song, but that changes how you approach every song and how you write. That maybe that's a principle that will come up during this conversation. There's these like small things you can do that kind of generate big change.
I will not say the word love again in the next.
You're allowed to say love, man. We're not against love here. No, I thought that was interesting though. So like for you, when you were out in Hollywood and you were doing all that, from what I read about you, it sounds like the sports thing was kind of like, it became like a lot of pressure. And then did the music thing kind of turn into that? Did that like shatter the sanctuary of that for you? Like all of a sudden now I'm striving for this other thing instead of striving for this thing, like that sort of idea of just trying to strive and accomplish?
I think you hit it on the head, Jason. It's losing the joy in the journey. It's getting out of touch with the moment. It's looking too far ahead and setting yourself up for disappointment when what you do comes with so many expectations of what will come. And yeah, it cut me off at a certain point from really being able to freely express myself. I was trying to write hits, and nobody wants to hear a song that's built on trying. Maybe they do. Maybe some people work really hard and grind and hate themselves all the way through the creative process. But it just became a bit deflated. I lost touch with the love of why I did music, which previously, as I shared, was this respite from the pressures of athletic life. And I'm sure it wasn't all that, I love music and I'm sure I was enjoying it on some level. But it was how I was trying to stay afloat in life. And it's not the easiest path to carve out livelihood.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Especially when you have to be the best.
Right. Yeah, it is like that.
Mindset, which is limiting in life in general, and part of what I've dealt with since being a boy. Because my father, and he expressed this desire and this vision of me being the best. And it's an impossible yardstick to measure up to.
Yeah. And so that's kind of a big part of your journey, like whether it was athletics or when you transitioned to music, just that idea of trying to live up to that is, I'm sure it can be exhausting, right? Like
perfectionist in recovery.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
you meet any of us out there, it's definitely exhausting. You get burned out 3 times a year. And
yeah. Well, how do you deal with that now, man? Like, how do you do you still battle with that?
I think as you go through life, perhaps if you're on a path of self-development, if you're building up mindfulness and awareness of who you are in the world, those same neuroses of the past, they don't go away for good. You just kind of shift your relationship with them. maybe it doesn't become so serious. It's like an old friend you welcome into the room rather than something when it rears its head you shut down upon. So it's still there, it comes up. But for me, what was like kind of the big change in my life was discovering this way of dealing with all of those inner attitudes through yoga. And for me, yoga is the main vehicle that I use to work within myself and on myself. There's many yogas: kung fu, tai chi, meditation. These can all be considered yogas, ways of bringing this individual self in connection with that greater universal intelligence.
I appreciate you sharing the sort of the broader definition of yoga, because it's really just, like you said, it's not so much when people think yoga, they might get these ideas of, hot rooms and mats and tight pants and all. But I mean, what you're saying is it's like, it's a practice that sort of grounds you, unites you with your body, and that can be a multitude of different things, essentially. For you, well, that's part of your journey. I mean, spending 4 years traveling and kind of experiencing yoga and studying with some of these spiritual masters and everything like that, would I definitely want to hear about that, because that sounds like the way you describe that period of life. I know in your bio you describe it in a few sentences, but talking about 4 years of like study and working with these different masters around the world. So I want to hear more about that. How do you recommend somebody toe the line between self-improvement, you want to call it, self-development, whatever we want to call it, and acceptance? Because that's sometimes like, that can be the line, in my opinion, right? It's like, okay, like if I'm working on myself, does that mean I'm not good enough? But then I also want to like improve on things. But then by trying to improve on things, am I saying I'm not good enough? Or like, how, trying to be at peace with all that and be in the center of all that. How do you do that?
You answer that question, Jason, and you're going to have a career as a spiritual teacher.
Well, this is this is what you do with Flourish, right? I mean, you help kind of facilitate these things. So
it is, brother. And acceptance is really the foundation. It's like the beginning. The famous quote from Lao Tzu, and really the core teaching of the Tao Te Ching, is just that. If the journey of 10,000 miles, this is like the holy grail of travel quotes, the journey of 10,000 miles starts with the next step. Well, you just don't take the next step if you don't accept who you are. That resistance, which can be stifling and keep you stuck, has to be overcome by at least enough acceptance and self-approval that you allow yourself to risk forging ahead. And you have to keep coming back to it. I think not enoughness is maybe, one of the most common through lines or threads of the human experience. Raise your hand if you've ever felt like you're not enough, right? And the whole room's hands shoot up. Not enough, not worthy, not belonging. And these are the problems that Flourish seeks to solve by building community and by really practicing a radical level of acceptance. Our tagline on our logo, if you can read it, says, "All of you is welcome here." So it means no matter where you're at, how stuck you are, how fucked up your life is, wherever you've been, you belong. We get it. I've been there before. And I think risking vulnerability to expose with people that you trust, what these things are that feel heavy in your life, that immediately lightens the load.
We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. I know you love earning travel rewards and cash back, and that's why you're going to love Rakuten. With Rakuten, you can earn cash back on everything you need to book your dream trip: hotels, flights, rental cars, experiences, and more, while still booking through your favorite travel sites. And don't worry, cash back can be earned on top of earning the credit card points and the hotel and airline loyalty points that matter most to you, depending on how you make your booking. Plus, with Rakuten, you can also earn cash back on groceries and other purchases like electronics, pet supplies, and more. And the best part, you can join today for free and start earning cash back on top of your travel rewards. Go to Rakuten.com or get the app. That's Rakuten, Rakuten. Rakuten, the most rewarding way to shop. Now, back to the show. Well, I know you came to this episode with these 5 pillars of well-being that can lead to flourishing in your life. And I want to get into those, but I do want to talk about this period of time where you traveled and kind of explored some of this stuff for yourself, because I would imagine that some of the things you learned carry into some of these lessons you're going to share with us today. We love actionable takeaways here, but I want to hear a little bit more about that time in your life, which sounds pivotal. From what I read, it seems like that was very pivotal for you. Just give us like a little bit of an insight into, beyond that sentence of I spent 4 years traveling out, like, where did you go? Like, how did you I just want to dig into that. Like, how did you plan it? Were you just kind of like, hey, I'm just going to show up somewhere and then let it lead me to the next thing? Like, just I got so many questions about it, but I kind of want to hear you just like where to start, right? Like, how did you go into that? Was it just like, I'm buying a one-way ticket and I'm going to seek, Zen on this mountaintop? Or was it just, how did it all start? Where did it take you?
Jason, you interview people who travel, so this is a reoccurring theme. It was catalyzed by a breakup.
Healing.
Okay.
You wanted some
And then
healing.
the healing journey, which for me, that was probably 4 years of avoiding, dealing with the pain of that breakup. Uh, not in some. I mean, that's a bit of an overstatement. But to go back to Hollywood, 7 years, 8 years after I was teaching so much yoga, 12, 14 classes a week, it was just becoming like a little bit boring. The songwriting thing was causing a bit of burnout. I had an Australian girlfriend at the time, and we were invited to go spend a year with her family, kind of work abroad. She was originally from New Zealand, so I went from LA to New Zealand, toured that island for a month and a half or so, flew to Southwest Australia in a little small town called Margaret River, kind of famous on the surf circuit. And inevitably, that relationship ended. The writing was on the wall in LA. And when I left Australia, I remember being in a bookstore and going to the Lonely Planet section and just kind of combing through places. I was on the other side of the world for the first time, so there was a lot of things proximate. And I went to Thailand. I was seeking some silence. I wanted to go into a Vipassana meditation, which I had done here in the States. This is supposedly Buddha's original teachings on meditation. And in the West or all around the world, they have these Vipassana courses. They're free. They're 10 days. They're intense, silent, kind of 14 to 16 hours a day of sitting. It hurts. And I didn't want something quite so fierce. I didn't want something that was going to be so challenging. I needed a bit of a soft space to just hold myself through this recent breakup. So I got to Thailand and I sought out the right center for me to sit. And I spent a few weeks at this beautiful forest monastery in the north of Thailand. And we were doing more walking meditation through the woods with the monks than like this rigid sitting practice. It was very good for me.
Yeah. So, did you just turn up at how did you even find the place?
That was fun. I was free. I was untethered. And I was kind of following the breadcrumbs through conversations, meeting travelers along the way, getting a hot tip on because there's so many options in Thailand that you can choose to study from. So I would sign up for a Vipassana. I would be on my way. Then I would meet an unlikely character who would say, no, you got to go to this place. And I would look it up. And it felt like, okay, that's more what I was looking for. So I would kind of change my direction. And en route, I would be diverted to the next spot. And I feel like I've been really guided, especially to land at the feet of these masters. Like there's so many different places I could have ended up, but the great beings that I ended up with were right for me. I feel like that's for sure. Like they were a magnet drawing me,
Hmm.
and it was an inevitable outcome.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I appreciate the perspective of, looking at the other options and say, like, not just saying, okay, yeah, Vipassana, I'm going to put myself through this, 10 days. Because that is the sort of, it can be the inclination. Like I've talked to people that have done that and they've gotten a lot out of it. But to me, it does sound pretty terrible, like sitting for so long and just being quiet. I mean, I'm a podcaster, so I can't shut up, but yeah, I don't know. I'm just bringing it up because I think anybody listening that has considered these things, it could be helpful instead of just diving into something that, this is like, this is one thing about going out of your comfort zone. And there's another thing about getting out of your comfort zone, but also aligning with what might work better for you. You know what I mean?
For sure. And Jason, that's a good point. A big part of what we emphasize at Flourish is these curriculum which expose individuals who are with us to so many different ways of practicing well-being, where somebody might find that crafting and art making is what soothes their nervous system and quiets their mind and connects them to themselves in a deeper way. Some people might like laughter practice or ecstatic dance, breath work, whatever it is. All of those are kind of, what can we say, vehicles that can deliver us to this state of being which we seek, which is basically inner peace and, a lot of gratitude for the gift of life. So it doesn't have to be austere. I think there's times for that in life, and you have to honor yourself along your journey enough to give yourself what you need. And you might not want to do the intense practices, but you might know that you need them at that phase in your life, so you do that. It's tuning in to what you need and following that guidance.
After you had the experience with the walking meditations, you spent some weeks in this place. What was your mindset at that time coming out of it? And then where did the journey take you? Can you kind of like paint the picture of
Yeah.
sort of the journey?
Well, on the map, we went from LA to New Zealand to Western Australia, flew to Bangkok, had mostly a northern Thailand experience. I have not been to the south of Thailand yet, but just to kind of jump ahead, the cool thing about all of these travels is this is now what I do, is bring people back to those places which I was blessed to experience. So when we go to Thailand next year, we'll do this northern pilgrimage. We'll shoot over to Cambodia, which is where I went next. I didn't spend a lot of time there. I basically went to visit Angkor Wat, this massive temple complex. I think it's the biggest temple complex in the world. And that was like, wake up with the sunrise, walk barefoot through the temple before the throngs of tourists came and, kind of took over. And then I was going across Southeast Asia. I skipped Laos. I went to Vietnam. Again, I was called to the mountains. I felt like I needed to really ground myself, and I've always been in love with the mountain. Not that I avoid the beach. I live in San Diego, but I feel like my soul is connected in the most powerful way when I'm up at the top of a mountain. I rode a motorbike to the border of China in Vietnam, spent probably a month there, and then flew to Bali. I had a yoga retreat that I was hosting in Bali. And I was so exhausted from all of the moving and the experiencing from the previous months that I just left Vietnam early and laid on a beanbag in the Gili Islands of Lombok for 3 days. People thought that I was high the whole time because I just was floored, but I was not. I was just giving up all of this doing for like a lifetime. And that was a really peak moment for me, was just letting go. From Bali, I'm sorry, I just was like disappearing in that memory of being
No,
on the
that's
beanbag,
great.
looking at the
I
sunset.
love it.
From Bali, I think the best moment of my travels was the 4 months that I spent at the Five Immortals Temple in central China, in this region called Wudongshan. And if anybody speaks Mandarin, forgive me, my Chinese accent is no good. And we were training Kung Fu and Tai Chi and studying internal alchemy, which is the enlightenment path through the Taoist perspective. And that was fierce It was really challenging, and we had a community of 30 practitioners who were suffering on a daily basis together, which brought us together in a really beautiful way. 4 a.m., beat the drum, run to the top of the mountain, practice Qigong with the rising sun, come down, hold silence, train for 3 hours, do your chores. It was just every day. And when the clouds and the fog would roll in for a week, we were sleeping on wood planks, and we had one comforter. That thing would get wet. It would get moldy. It wouldn't dry. So you were like sleeping in soggy blankets on a wood plank, and it was awesome. And I will say one thing, Jason, the parameter that I set for myself throughout all of these travels was to kind of live low. I was pretty privileged growing up in the suburbs of Chicago. I was given a lot of opportunity, and I felt like my character required some pruning of this kind of entitled, privileged life that I had lived. And I needed to get comfortable living with less, even like with all that I wanted from music. Can you be content, satisfied, fulfilled, staying in a $3 hostel, living in the temple, and sleeping on the wood planks with the molding blankets? And the answer is yes. And there's so much beauty in simple living. And that was like reculturing and reorienting my perspective on what I needed to be happy. So I kind of came down from that, and I loved it. Round this off real quick: China to Hawaii to India. And I was in India for 18 months, trekked through Nepal, kind of circuited around Europe. And India was the holy grail for me. I knew if I went there to start my travels, I wouldn't go anywhere else because I was so in love with the Hindu pantheon of deities and that whole yoga culture. So that was a whole world unto itself where I went to these real remote places. Like I tell my Indian friends all the temples that I visited, and they're like, man, you've gone so many more places than me.
That's incredible.
But he was awesome. And, we could go on about that, but I digress.
No, that's great. Yes. I mean, first of all, the temple, the Immortals Temple, that is called. What a name. First of all,
Five Immortals.
You could, and this sound like this entire, because I used to watch Kung Fu movies growing up. And I mean, you like lived, it sounds like like the Kung Fu movies that I watched. It's like, like crazy training, they would carry buckets with, things with spikes you couldn't drop. I mean, I don't know what you were doing, but it sounds very similar, like a Shaolin temple type of thing.
It was like that, Jason.
That's crazy.
One of the stories I love to tell from the temple was I was a bit arrogant. I still am. I'm still working on that. No human personality is perfect. And I decided to take a vow of silence. Nobody else was doing that. And it really didn't work or fit with the group dynamic because we had to work together. But Pat was doing 3 days of silence. The day I chose to do that, I had to ask Shifu. He said yes. He sent us down the mountain, which was like a 2-hour downhill trek, probably 3 hours on the way up, to pick up supplies for a medicine house that he was building on the top of the mountain, which was like 30 beds and like bed frames, really terrible things to carry up. So I had a stick, I cut a bamboo, and I had on either side like the foot and the head of the bed, steel framed, sliding off. And I was like, I wanted to complain. I was looking at my friends and like saying, this is crazy. And then he sent us down again. But very soon, since I couldn't talk and I couldn't put voice to complaint, it was just this awesome dance of one step at a time. Had I been able to voice my complaining energy, it would have made the whole thing terrible. But since I was in silence and I couldn't kind of reinforce the fact that this sucked, it didn't suck. I didn't give energy to what wasn't going well. And I love that because I teach the art of not complaining, especially in the men's retreats that we hold. I think there's a lot of power in just deflating the complaining mind. Anyways, a teaching from travel.
Yeah, again, I'm still got the montage, the karate kung fu training montage thing going on in my head, imagining you carrying this bed frame up the mountain. That's insane, man. But yeah, I mean, to your point of just kind of living simply, it's one of the great lessons of travel. I think when you travel, when you budget travel, and yeah, I think it's a valuable experience for anybody, even if you can afford more. It's just something about, like you said, getting used to that. You're like, wow, like not only am I happy with less, and I can be happy or content or whatever word works for you, I'm thriving, like this feels great. And it's definitely something that's impacted me for my entire life. Even though I live somewhere now, I own possessions like that, but having had so many years of just living with less, it can impact your whole life, those lessons.
Part of what people take away from their flourish experiences when we go to India, Peru, any place which is very different, the transformation that happens is half in part because of this exposure to different ideas and to witness people seemingly living with less who appear to be radiantly happy. That comes across in India in a really powerful way because people are so close to God and so much in their hearts that the smiles, that bloom across the lips of folks who are in the dirt, it's something like that we don't know, or it's hard to come by, perhaps in the West. So it's a real honor, and that exchange is worth it alone. Absolutely.
What does your family think about the path you've chosen, coming from like the budding career in athletics and then music into what you've built and kind of the work you do today?
Yeah, it's a good question for reflection, and I'm reminded of like a really validating moment that I shared with my father, kind of on the tail end of all of my travels. And he was a finance guy in Chicago. My brother followed a very similar path and went into sales. Kind of did, you know, the early morning wake up, commute downtown, work, come home, give time for the family and whatnot. And I was doing such a different thing, always following my passions and seeking this greater purpose. Not that there's not purpose and meaning in that lifestyle. It's rich and full for them. But my path was so different, um, that maybe folks didn't quite understand, people that I grew up with. Like, I remember coming home from India with a huge beard and even longer hair. And this kid looks at me and he said, "What happened to you?" He was like, he had no idea what I had been up to. And I couldn't even begin to explain that to him. But my dad said he was talking to a bunch of his buddies. And one of the guys was like, "He's the one that figured it out," and I felt seen in that because I'm so grateful when I go back to some of these moments and just realize the courage that I had to seek these adventures. And I think one of the parameters, not only to live with less and to train myself in that way, it was also like, okay, if your life is a movie, what's the most, outstanding next scene that you could write for it? I was kind of using that as a benchmark to keep seeking these extraordinary experiences.
Thank you for sharing that. I was thinking about anybody listening here who might be living more unconventionally relative, or choosing, perhaps considering a path that's more unconventional relative to their background, and something that others in the family might disagree with, or something like that. I mean, I was just curious what your experience was. Yeah, you kind of mentioned just there getting into kind of seeking those experiences. And this is another sort of seeker slash travel related question I have for you, which has to do with the hedonic treadmill. If you've heard that term, it's just the idea of like, like you're just constantly seeking the next thing. And then it just ends up being like a different pattern that's replacing like another pattern you might have had in a 9 to 5 existence, for example. Not you, but I'm just speaking in generalities. But that idea of, when is it enough kind of thing, or, trying to figure like, okay, am I just, first I was chasing promotions. Now I'm just chasing experiences, which, listen, I host a travel podcast. I was nomadic for over 10 years. Like I get it. Like I've lived that. I wasn't like thinking I got to stop running on the hedonic treadmill now. This is baloney. It's like following your heart, but then maybe it can be, I don't know. I thought it was worth coming up because maybe if that is something that becomes detrimental and it's replacing like your ability to just sit with yourself and like, yeah, I'm just wondering, is that something you've discussed before or thought about for yourself?
It's a really good insight, Jason. And I think it's a great segue to leaning into these 5 pillars of well-being we want to talk about. Um, One thing that comes up is, again, in the Tao Te Ching, and George Harrison wrote this in the Beatles, was that without going out your door, you can know all ways of heaven. On the spiritual journey, you don't need to really go anywhere or do anything to have that insight, which would wake you up to the reality of who you are. So, in some way, in some classical texts of yoga, they suggest that the yogi doesn't travel long distances, that that's exhausting, and it takes you kind of away from the space which you're cultivating in, and that space um, is important. Like you want to sit in the same cushion every day in the same place at the same time. It builds up this regularity so that when you sit, you drop into meditation and you can deepen with that type of structure. When you travel, you like bring your meditation shawl with you so that wherever you are, at least you have this object which is starting to build up some energy. But for me, a great Indian teacher said, God's gift to you are your talents. Your gift back to God is using them. And after 4 years for me, I just felt like, okay, enough experience. I actually couldn't spend almost one more day away from the next step of my life, which was to grow roots and to start sharing my gifts again. My cup was full. I needed to come back and start to water the world around me a bit with all of that which I had been given. And I live a very purpose-driven life. Like I feel fulfillment now more than anything by building my business, by creating these opportunities for other people to connect with themselves. And with a family and a home and a thriving podcast with over 12 million downloads and counting, I'm sure you understand, how much meaning sharing your gifts brings to your life. But I wouldn't have, traded those years on the road for anything. And it's so wonderful for me that I was a bit, potentially you could say, aimless, or like I didn't know what was going to come of this. I wasn't doing it really to get anything these years of traveling. I was serving my life. I was giving myself this chance to connect with these traditions, which for sure, I knew were going to empower my life for the rest of my life. But the fact that, I did that without expectation, that I'm going back to these places with my business and connecting these folks who travel with us to the teachers that I had. It's just this wonderful full circle, which I couldn't have seen coming, but looking back, it's a beautiful part of the play.
Yeah, I love it. It's I think probably a lot of that resonates with people listening. It's like for some of us, we might not know what's going to come out of it, but we know it's something we have to do. And I'm speaking about traveling. Maybe some people, they don't, like you said, they don't need to go anywhere. You don't necessarily need to go anywhere to have some form of enlightenment, whatever that means to you, whether you're spiritual or not, insight into what you want to do as whatever. Like you said, you can get that at home, and that's good because people are listening and they're like, oh, good, I save some money now. I don't need to go. But I think a lot of people listening in this community, at least, and your community, I'm sure, is you might not know why you need to do it, but you just need to do it. You need to get out and explore and travel for whatever reason and fill your cup, like you said, in that way, so you can water it out later. I love that metaphor. We'll get back to the interview in just a moment. Now, back to the show. Let's get into these 5 pillars. We probably hit on a bunch of them already, but I want to dig into some of these because I think I love the word flourish. Actually, I think it's a nice word, and I guess we could start there. Like, what does to flourish mean to you? Because I think that frames up these 5 pillars pretty well.
Yeah, flourish. What does it mean? To flourish is to experience supreme well-being in all aspects of your life. There's some grandiosity in human flourishing because it's a moving target, things are always changing. um, we touch these high points in our life, but I don't think to be flourishing as a human cuts you off from the full range of the human heart, because we know that there's a lot of power in vulnerability. So let's look at the 5 pillars, and these 5 aspects of well-being would sum up to human flourishing. And just to give a little bit of context, when I came back from traveling, I was trying to figure out what to do. And I was a bit lost for 9 months, a year. It took me a while to find the next step. For me, going back to hustling yoga classes, and if anybody's teaching a lot of yoga classes, it gets a bit exhausting. Physically, it's demanding. So I was like, all right, this is not the only thing and I have more gifts than this. There's something else. So I enrolled in the College of Executive Coaching, and in that curriculum, we were given a book called Flourish. And this book was by Martin E.P. Seligman, who is the grandfather of positive psychology. He really changed the game in psychology from looking at deficit to what's going well. And he did all of these amazing experiments, which started to prove that the effectiveness of gratitude far outweighed pharmaceuticals in some cases to work with depression. There was long withstanding benefits for somebody who wrote a gratitude letter to someone in their life that had offered them an act of kindness and knocked on their door and read it out loud. So I was really intrigued. And when I came upon these 5 pillars of well-being, a light bulb went off, because I experience these 5 pillars regularly. So I feel like I'm somebody who is experiencing human flourishing in these regards. And then I also felt like I knew how to bring other people into that resonance of flourish. So there's an acronym, we could say PERMA. Again, this is Seligman's work, PERMA. If anybody's watching and wants to write that down, you can take notes on these. And while we're doing this, the invitation for the listener and for you, Jason, is to just reflect on kind of where you're at, to measure yourself up against, these ideas. And again, there's so many ways that we can start to activate these aspects of our life. The first one is called positive emotion. In the spectrum of emotions, I've got an emotion wheel right here, just for reference. We can see surprise, happy, sad, disgust, anger, fear, and then all of these shades of those emotions. But if you're just maybe looking at happy and surprise, some of these words would be in that spectrum of positive emotion. So are you feeling joy, gratitude, excitement, positivity on a regular basis, like maybe more often than sadness, depression, whatever it is? And no judgment. We all, are entitled to the fullness of this life. But what can you do if you're stuck in sadness to shift your state to come out of it? Well, there's so many things. You could just try laughing.
It's contagious.
It is. And the chemical effects and the feel good endorphins that are released when you fake laughing are the same as real laughter. So laughter practice works. Smiling works. And there's so many things we can do, little things. So positive emotions. I mean, Jason, how do you want this to go? Do you want to offer reflection as we go through these 5, or do we want to wait till the end?
No, let's just, I don't know. We'll see what comes up. But
Like, what makes you feel good? If it's seeing the smile of your child, then what are the small things you can do to spend more time with your kids? These types of questions. Perma, engagement. And maybe we can even frame some of this in the context of traveling. Engagement means you get lost in what you're doing. You lose track of time. You enter the proverbial flow state. And one way that you can simulate that is by having an elevated conversation with somebody. I'm sure you met people over those 10 years on the road, Jason, where you ended up in a tea house or a coffee shop. And before you knew it, it was dark outside. You'd made a lifelong friend and you've just lost yourself. You were immersed.
I'm doing it right now, man.
Are we engaged?
I'm engaged.
We're laughing. We are flourishing right now, Jason. So far, I think we can check the box. Positive emotions are flowing in this conversation, and we're super engaged.
Yeah.
The third aspect, which is also happening here, is relationships. But we're in relationship with the world and everyone in it that we encounter on some level, but that deepening of relationships that matter in our life. So, who's one person that's super important to you, Jason?
Well, my kids, my family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can identify like the 5 people in the front row of your life, as Tony Robbins says, what are you doing to nourish those relationships?
Yeah.
If you're podcasting 10 podcasts a day, no time for the kids, do not enter sign on the door, then you're cutting yourself off from the experience and the benefits of being there with them in a deep way, risking vulnerability, sharing intimacy.
Yeah. It's a great way to think about it is I like it when you can kind of ask the right question related to that point. In that case, the question was like, what can you do to foster these relationships? Or I'm not sure exactly how you worded it, but
sure. It's a great question. That's a great point. On the road, you're meeting new friends, you're having lovers all along the way, you're developing those relationships. But, there's people that love you back home as well. Like, when was the last time you called? And what's the texture of those conversations? Are you willing to, elevate the conversation a bit and really check in with somebody's heart? And there's a lot of richness in that. So positive emotion, engagement, relationships, and then the M in PERMA is meaning. So what is meaning? It's not far away from purpose, but it's a little bit different. And the way I like to frame it is, what are you part of that's bigger than yourself? What gives meaning to life for many people is the family dynamic, their children, their partners, your community, your affiliations. You see, we had the San Diego Padres versus the LA Dodgers game 3 last night, leading up to the World Series. And there's a lot of people in San Diego who find meaning by being part of this institution, which is bigger than themselves, called the San Diego Padres. For me, I feel that with the University of Michigan, where I played soccer. Like, I don't really watch sports other than Michigan football. And when I see those colors and all of that pageantry, it just lights something up. I'm part of this bigger thing. And of course, religion is probably the main vehicle where people find meaning, spirituality with God, with the universe, with that sense of being part of this bigger thing, which is, the mystery. And what are you doing to nurture that connection? Do you have a practice? Are you in prayer? Are you studying the scriptures? Are you chanting? What there's again 10,000 paths that lead to the
Are you going to
summit.
baseball games?
Are you going to baseball games?
Right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
Jason. And that's how it can be, you know? And then yeah, connect with those worlds. Nurture them. Again, you got to give some energy um, to bring these things to life. The last one is cool. It feels unexpected, but I think we certainly all know this. PERMA for accomplishment. That in this whole experience of human flourishing, I mean, you check the box on your to-do list and it feels good. You reach a goal that you've been, I wouldn't say striving for because I veer away from that now, but that you've been working towards, that you've aimed your bow at and hit the target, you can celebrate that. Feels really good. It's good to get things done. It's good to make progress, but one step at a time, I would say. So these are five aspects of human flourishing, and knowing them is empowering because you can show up for your life having these things in mind, where if you're down, okay, look at you, oh, I can't do anything, I'm so lazy, I never get things done. Go to the grocery store, check the box, your fridge is empty, get some groceries and you'll feel good about doing that.
Love it. PERMA, positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, accomplishment. I think this is great. I think that this is an opportunity for, thanks for sharing all this, by the way, and the follow-up questions that you can sort of ask yourself to help to reflect and consider what each of those might mean for you in this moment right now. I think that's super powerful. I find, seems to me that the questions you ask yourself are probably the most important questions that you ask, because that's what's generating the awareness. I think the awareness, like this is an opportunity that you sharing this is that, okay, now we have an awareness around this framework, which creates an awareness around these individual pillars, which we can use to initiate change if something feels off balance, I suppose.
Well said, Jason. Well said. And I think the last thing I'll add to that on my side is, what's the smallest thing you can do today to take a step towards feeling good, building your relationships up, accomplishing that big goal? Because from where we're at to where we want to go, it could be, quite a ways that we have to walk. So tying it into this attitude of acceptance. Okay, here's where I'm at. I'm feeling a bit down. I've been stuck for some time. Maybe you're not going to get fully unstuck in one, fall swoop. What's the smallest thing? It's just a bit more compassionate. It invites patience. It invites the 10,000 steps by taking the next step, so that we don't have to feel so overwhelmed, by the mountain to climb.
I love that, man. That's such a great single call to action to kind of tie this together. And if anybody listening that acts on that and they're like, hey, I'm actually taking something from this episode, I'm doing this thing, get in touch, let us know. We'd love to hear what you did, because I love to share those stories. Just it's empowering, and especially that idea that you can just do a small thing. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it in that way, of just that can be a more compassionate approach to yourself. It's easy to kind of think of it as a practical, okay, yeah, take a small step today. It's going to give me some momentum. It's going to give me like something sort of positive to lean on for the day. It's going to get me closer to my goal. But then thinking about it through the lens of being compassionate to yourself as well, that's an incredible like benefit, side benefit, or main benefit perhaps, to thinking of it that way. I think it's great. Thank you for putting that together for us today. I should mention, of course, your website again, peaceloveflourish.com, and you have the retreats there. Do you want to share a little bit more about that so people can check it out? And then I had a couple follow-up questions before I let you go, if that's
Sure.
okay. So you can eat breakfast or something. I don't even know what time it is there anymore.
Wow. It's 4:57. And I was telling Jason that I thought our meeting was yesterday. So I've awoke at 3:27 a.m.
The
2 days in a row.
dedication.
It's great.
I
I've
mean,
got teacher training this weekend. And I was out of town for 10 days. My body was stiff. So I've got like hours this morning to practice. Thank you, Jason, for showing up.
see, there's that
You're invisible.
there's that no complaining in action. And you know what? You're not even, I mean, at least you didn't have to carry a bed frame up a mountain this morning.
I'm grateful. Life is good. Yeah, that was something else. Look, for me, Flourish is my passion. It's my purpose. It fulfills me in the most meaningful way. And I get this awesome chance to travel with people. So sharing peak experiences with people is probably the best way to build relationships. You know, when you're falling in love and like you take your partner to the desert on your second date and you are out under the stars, like you're bonding in the most beautiful ways. So our intention is to create these really amazing experiences with a spiritual inclination, culturally immersive. We do a bunch of different things at Flourish. We have like 5 modules. One is called Men's Retreat. We bring groups of men into the mountains and we go through this kind of pseudo rites of passage to achieve or to start to get a sense for what mature masculinity looks like. It's amazing. It's intense. My partner, Catalina de Leon, leads our women's retreats. There's a different texture to those, but they're super beautiful. And the big things we do every year is Paradise and Pilgrimage. Paradise looks like 1 week on the beach in Mexico, Costa Rica. It's a more intensive practicum. We'll have like 4 sessions a day. Wake up with morning and meditation, yoga and meditation, and then flow through a whole array of well-being modalities, as I suggested, from sweat lodge, temescal, to all different types of art, relationship building. And then the crown jewel is the pilgrimage, baby. That's Flourish's journey to the epicenters of spiritual earth. Last year was 2 weeks in India. Something that we're doing, which is really amazing, is we brought a documentarian to India last year and we shot a feature-length film. It's getting a lot of applause. And we've actually garnered some support to shoot episode 2 in Peru. And we're going to Peru, the heart of the earth, you might say, in about 3 weeks. So we've got a great group gathered. And again, practice, spiritual practice, relationship building, community is at the core of what we value, shared experiences, cultural immersion, really great food, and some rather elevated accommodations. We're not doing what Pat Sperry did in those 4 years, kind of living really low. We're getting out there, we're working for it all day, and then we're coming back to the lap of luxury, which is pretty awesome, with a few caveats in between. We like some simple accommodation because there's a lot of richness in that. But yeah, the call of action is to, if you're lonely, if you're feeling like you're not connecting with yourself, if you're stuck on your cell phone and just need to feel your heart more deeply and start to deal with whatever's going on within you in a very safe and fun space, then Flourish is a great place to elevate your existence, to grow your soul tribe, and to really imbibe the beauty of culture. We're here for it.
Beautiful, man. Congrats on building this and creating this community, and that being like the full circle moment as you described before, kind of tying in all your travels and the work you did over the years. Appreciate you sharing, and we'll certainly link up to everything. I had a couple more questions, if it's okay, before I let you go, because, I haven't really talked about this on the show because I haven't had anybody that specialized in what you said in an email, which was helping men integrate their masculinity and some of the lessons from the men's retreats you've run and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm just curious to hear a bit more about what that looks like. And you mentioned the rites of passage thing, and I was reading recently, I think it's the book, The Anxious Generation. I'm not sure if you read that book. It's about cell phone use among teens and all this stuff. But one of the points he made is that in modern society, modern Western society, I'd say, maybe more specifically, the rites of passage have kind of disappeared, like these sort of rites of initiation and these sort of markings of like a particular time in life where you go from X to Y or whatever. Like a classic example might be like a bar mitzvah or something for somebody of the Jewish faith when they're 13 years old. And then that's when they become a man. I'm using air quotes, or some of the other like examples that like the Maasai warriors have in different, groups around the world, that those are disappearing, and that we should maybe be conscious of that and work to perhaps construct some of those for our own families, because they're important. It's an important part of growing up. So for example, like I might say to my daughter, okay, when you're 9 years old, you're allowed to walk like to the store by yourself and get candy, and the store's like, a mile away or whatever. And that will be like and that will be like maybe not a rite of passage in terms of like a ceremony, but it'll be something like, it's like a benchmark, right? That kind of like tells you, oh, okay, I'm at this phase now. And apparently those are very important to humans. And it's not something we've talked about too much here. And it sounds like that I'm getting a sense of that's kind of like a part of what you do here. So yeah, I just wanted to hear your thoughts around that.
Well, Jason, you've gotten me to sit up a little bit taller.
Okay.
As soon as you say men's work, it calls me into this kind of uprightness, and I love the topic. I'm really passionate about it. I run men's groups for free in San Diego because now we're talking about rites of passage just for a few minutes. And women have rites of passage, and you're mentioning your daughter, and that's valid and true. But what I'm really passionate about and have some experience with is working with men in this case. I mean, we have 80% women who come to Flourish retreat. So working with women is a privilege and an honor, and creating safe spaces to hold a container where women feel like, okay, they can start to do this work and be vulnerable. That's an honor. I take it very seriously. I feel it's really powerful that I have just this most amazing partner in Catalina, so that we're holding this female and masculine energetic pillars to support our groups with. Great. But women don't come to men's retreat. And they can't, because men start acting weird when women are around, and the whole thing is just lost. So it doesn't work. Kat was like, can I come? Do you want me to I'm like, you cannot come. These guys are going to be completely distracted. So a little history lesson, go back to 1780 to 1830, the Industrial Revolution, this really big moment in human history, which just shifted the script forevermore. There's no going back. But before that, there was 5,000 years of human culture, okay? And in all of that time, men stayed at home more or less. And there was this proximity that the sons had to their fathers, whether it was in the field, just watching the male body, feeling that male mode of emotion and how men process their inner worlds. We saw it, we felt it. There was an exchange from father to son through passing on a trade. There was a boy with the lodge of grandfathers and uncles in council, in the hunt. So we knew it was natural what it looked and felt like to be a man. But in the Industrial Revolution, for the first time, the man left the home to go to the factory. And then women started raising boys in the West, right? And not across the board. So this isn't a blanket statement, but it's relatively true. And when I ask the men in circle, how many of you were raised by your mothers, 90% of the hands shoot up. I mean, my dad was really present and involved in my life, but he woke up at 4 a.m., went downtown Chicago, came home at 5. And then he would coach us and be part of our lives. But often, boys get their father's temperaments when they come home from work rather than their teachings. So with all of that being said, the basic understanding and the foundation of my learning comes from a book called The King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. And those are the 4 predominant energies of the male psyche, which if you study history and mythology and stories, these archetypes just come up over and over again. And we can look at any movie, Lord of the Rings, you mentioned it before, to kind of discern who is the embodied king, warrior, magician, and lover. And all of these aspects are in us. And when we start to understand those, we can activate them when needed to start to embody this mature masculinity. To go back, women cannot initiate boys into mature masculinity. This doesn't happen. If you look across time and culture, that's not the way it goes. Boys are taken, this is the cornerstone of rites of passage work from indigenous cultures. Boys are taken out of the comfort of the mother, typically at night. And the women are complicit. They're in on it. They pretend that there's this big drama. They're weeping and crying. And as soon as the boy's gone, they've done their part. They have to sever the connection with the mother, which is really the connection with comfort, and take them out of this soft space into the reality of the hardships of life. That's part of this initial phase. And we don't really get that, right? So these rites of passages have been lost more or less to the modern man. Women cannot, because women have a different mode of feeling. They have a whole different texture to their being. So it requires elders. There's a major deficit of elders in our culture, wise people, that the pursuit of knowledge has kind of replaced the value of wisdom, which comes from experience, comes from traveling too. So if you're a traveler, just know you're becoming wise and knowledgeable, which is great. So how do we deal with this as a 37-year-old man? And how are we blowing up and messing up our lives because of our boyhood psychology? One of the archetypes of the boyhood psychology in the king energy is the high chair tyrant, right? The boy, mom comes with the spoon, and if she doesn't feed it at the exact right time, if it's not the exact right temperature, then of course you throw the high chair and the food's all over the floor, where you demand that the world bends to your every will. Elsewise, you'll throw a tantrum. And I see a ton of men throwing tantrums in different ways. I do it myself at times, but then I have again this framework of the king, warrior, magician, lover, where I can say, okay, you were acting like a little tyrant. How would the king, embodied in his mature expression, have handled that situation? Because the king blesses his realm. The king creates order in the realm and boundaries. So having boundaries in that moment might look like exercising no, and just saying, no, I don't want my food right now, I'm not ready, rather than making a big deal about it. So we have these pseudo rites of passage initiations. We're going to try to do what wasn't done at that important moment, 13, puberty, coming of age, to deal with who we are now. And when you're in a group of men going through intense experiences, beat the drum at midnight, wake you out of bed, put a blindfold on, take you out to the woods, I don't want to give it all away. The element of surprise is essential. Not that you're going to be carrying a backpack filled with rocks to the top of that mountain and unpacking the weight of men that we carry from our ancestors, but you might. And you start to hear other men express vulnerably what their struggles are, and you realize that you're not an island, that you're not alone, that we all go through the same human stuff. That alone is like, wow, it's a relief. And, your romantic partner is not your therapist. So you need to have men that you can trust to hold you accountable, that you can bring your struggles with, who will give you good feedback. And then the art of giving feedback. So it goes on and on. It's relational. It's somatic. And we need new skills of how to feel and how to express ourselves as men.
Yeah. Wow. That's sounds incredible.
It was a lot, Jason. I'm just lit up. I'm definitely not now. I'm up.
No, that's great. Because I honestly have not had the chance to kind of dive into that topic with somebody. So it's interesting to hear that there's a framework out there like the king, warrior, magician, lover. Are there any other resources you can think of like that, like related to the conversation we had that you mentioned? Obviously we had the pillars conversation based on Martin E.P. Seligman's work, and this book around sort of the archetypes, the male archetypes. We love actionable takeaways. So anything you have that's coming to top of mind, feel free to share.
Well, if anyone's listening at this point, if you've been brave enough to make it to the 90th minute, the final hour of this elevated conversation between Jason and Pat, I commend you. Well done. This is the moment you've been waiting for. What is the final gift here? As far as the book goes, there's so many ways to connect with yourself. So the general kernel of wisdom here is just show up and try something new and see what happens. Try different ways of connecting with yourself. I'm asking you to put on a practice. And if it feels good, whether it's sitting, walking, singing, dancing, practicing this or that, if it feels good, then stick with it. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra says that the fruit of yoga is ripened by steadiness over a long period of time, and a little bit goes a long way. So maybe you're traveling and you can't do your asana practice if you're a yogi, but you can do 5 minutes of child's pose to downward facing dog and a forward bend. You can sit for 3 minutes. You don't have to sit for 3 hours. So a little bit goes a long ways, especially if you can be consistent. And when you fall off the horse, beating yourself up never helps. So just give that one up. Jesus said, do not condemn that which thy allows. So if you're a yogi and you smoke a cigarette, that's, you can't unsmoke it. So it doesn't help to chastise yourself inside your head. Be Here Now is this incredible cult classic from Ram Dass, who was this great Harvard psychologist turned yogi. I love Ram Dass as an access point to spirituality, especially from the Westerner's point of view. It's a brilliant mind who weaves psychology and humor and profound insight into his teachings. And I love his podcast. It's like he's no longer with us, but he recorded every one of his lectures. So we're now receiving post-mortem, like episode 279. I'm so excited every time a new one comes out. These jewels from the past.
And he's funny.
He's hilarious.
Yeah, he's funny.
He's hilarious. And he's not in his body, but I still feel like he's with us. I'm hanging out with him every time I hear him speak.
Yeah.
So he's a great resource. I would dive into Ram Dass. I mentioned the Tao Te Ching 4 times today. So check that out. It's so mysterious, kind of unlocks something within you. It's something you can't quite grasp, but it stirs the soul. I like Stephen Mitchell's version of that. And lastly, as a book, I would say the collection of poems translated by Daniel Ladinsky of Hafiz. Hafiz is a Sufi mystic, and he's got a collection of poems called The Gift. I never have a copy because I'm always giving it away. Just is so wonderful. If you're looking for something a little less literal and more poetic.
Love it. Thank you, good sir. What a wonderful conversation. I had a blast, and I really appreciate you getting up early to do it, and also just sharing so much of what you shared today. And I know there are a ton of takeaways here for people listening, and myself included. So thank you for allowing me to engage in this conversation and get lost in it and enjoy this time with you. Man, I'm just saying, Norway's ripe for Flourish.
Yeah.
So, can't say we're not going to do a part 2 in person. I got to put it out to the universe,
I love that, Jason. Let's hold the vision. For anybody that's hanging out with us, @BeFlourish is our Instagram, and then you can connect to us at peaceloveflourish.com. Either way, feel free to write me directly if you have any questions, any excitement about participating in Flourish. And you might be one of the lucky ones who comes to Norway to hang out with Jason and I in person.
Let's do
You're
it, man.
You're a wise, beautiful soul, man. I think you're an awesome guy. I'm really happy to connect. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're sweet. You're sweet. Yeah, well, let's keep in touch. Definitely appreciate your time. Thank you so very much.
You can call me Patrick now, Jason.
Patrick, thank you, Patrick. Oh, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure if I had permission. I got it.
Yeah. Blessings to you, brother.
I checked off a few things, man. Positive emotion, engagement, relationships, made a new friend. I got the meaning of putting this out to help people. And now we have the accomplishment. I can now call you Patrick. So, bam!
Fantastic.
Nailed the
well
perm.
Done, sir. You are flourishing, Jason.
I got a perm today. That's a bad pun. I'm sorry. All right. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks, Patrick. Take care.
Thank you.
There you have it. Quick thanks to Pat for stopping by the show. Of course, check him out at peaceloveflourish.com. I'm going to wrap this one up with a quote that I think does a good job of summarizing some of the stuff we talked about today. This one's from the Dalai Lama, who said, "In order to carry a positive action, we must develop here a positive vision." And I think that's what we've done today, at least starting to develop that positive vision, that foundation for flourishing in the coming year. And if you want a little challenge to go about your day, do something for yourself in the next few days, some sort of self-care. I know I am aiming to hit the sauna down at the Oslo Fjord tomorrow. And you know what? I have a lot to do, but I'm like, let me just set this to the side. I'm going to do a little sauna action with my friends. So, you know, we never have enough time. There's always stuff to do. If you are able just to carve out even an hour for yourself to do something that will fill your cup, I'm going to leave you with that challenge to go ahead and do that. Don't forget also to sign up for our newsletter over at zerototravel.com/newsletter. If you haven't done so, please sign up over there. It sends out once a week and it's free. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for being a part of this community. Peace and love to you and yours. Have a wonderful day. Cheers.
This podcast has been brought to you by zerototravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams a reality.